Hey guys, welcome back. Just a reminder, grab a ticket to our conference next May 22nd through the 25th. Come hang out with us in Grafton, Illinois. Once again, Rebecca Rose spoke at our first Secret Space conference, which was a success. We had a blast, and we've had some overwhelming feedback, so we decided to do it again. It's not Secret Space themed this year, but it's going to be fun, and we're really looking forward to it. On-site lodging has sold out. There is camping on-site available if you want to take advantage of that. But there are hotels and Airbnbs nearby if you want to look into that. Or you can get on the Telegram group, and that link is available on the website, and try and coordinate, either find a ride or a roommate with somebody there, because people are looking for roommates. And live stream tickets are going to be available again. They are only $99 this year. So take advantage of that if you can't make it, if you can't travel. Unfortunately, with the COVID restrictions, a lot of people still can't travel into the U.S. We're hoping they lift that before the conference, but we'll see what happens. We also have a new promo code for the Hopewell Farm CBD. JTT New gets you 20% off all of their products until the end of the year. That link is below. Promo code JTT New. And Omnia Radiation Balancer, if you guys are looking for something to any sort of EMF protection. There are patches and pendants they sell that protect against EMF. It balances the frequency coming in and actually turns it into something beneficial for your body. There's been a lot of great results from that, and people seem to love it. You get 10% off all their products with promo code TRUTH, all caps. Tonight, we are joined by our friend Rebecca Rose. She's a returning guest. I don't know how many times you've been on our channel by now, but
this is the
third time maybe. Yeah. So welcome back. Your presentation was fantastic. We just recently uploaded that. People seem to love it. It was very powerful, and you've been kind of on doing a little interview circuit yourself, and we're excited to have you back. You have some recent revelations, some new things coming forward. We're going to try and get into some brand new stuff today, and we're really excited. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm happy to see you guys again. It's good to be back on your show. So thanks for having me again.
Yes, happy to see you.
Great, you too. Yeah.
I see that you've been enjoying Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah, I finally moved from the old location, and I've always wanted to come back to the north. I used to live in the Yukon, to the east of Alaska, in northern Canada. So I love it's not for everybody. I mean, I'm in the interior, and every day is way below zero. So but I love it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not for me, but that's I would visit, but I wouldn't want to. It's too cold for me.
Not only below zero, but like no sunlight hardly.
That too. That would be rough.
Correct.
Yeah.
Some people are built for that, though. You seem to be enjoying it. In one of your videos.
I love it. Well, and we have the aurora up here. The aurora borealis.
You have that though.
Yeah. I mean, it's so magical. So magical.
Yeah.
In one of your recent videos, you said it reminds you of space in a way.
True enough. And because I'm like, why am I so drawn to these, what most people would say, like, not for me kind of environments, like these forsaken lands, like it's super extreme, super hot, super cold, super desolate, super remote, whatever it is, I'm always drawn to that. And Alaska being so cold and remote and dark, at least for this part of the year, it does remind me of space. So that was a small revelation on my part.
Yeah.
Like, is there a corollary to that?
So you've been having some other revelations come forward. You've gotten a hold of your some old documents that belong to your father, and you've been making some discoveries about him and some connections there. I don't know if you wanted to get into any of that or where you wanted to start, if you had anything you wanted to share.
Where do we go with that? They're the documents, I just inherited them, and I've looked through them, and every time I look through stuff, just piles of stuff that I kind of have fresh eyes is my understanding of the programs themselves, and also like my father, who was he? Who was that mystery man? That becomes a little more refined over time and more sophisticated, and looking in it like taking a fine-tooth comb to each and every little thing, and like writing down everything that I recall about him, and kind of putting clues together, because most of your audience will know that he worked in top secret, and he worked in the world of deep black budget projects with the Navy and with Lockheed and so on. A lot of that was in communications, which covers a broad swath of territory, really. But he remains in many ways kind of unknown. So I'm always looking for clues, and I very much believe he was taken into. I don't think it was a 20 and back or a time and back like that, but when he was 9, he was also abducted. And there's tons of evidence, like on his computer and through his sci-fi work and sci-fi book collection and everything, of his interest in space. Like that's very clear. So kind of putting things together, some of his technical notes that he left, and just his interests, his music, his correspondence, his penchant for deep secrecy, as far as the aliases he kept when he worked online, and he always used a like a spread spectrum phone, which is a military technology which allows your communications through that phone to be undetected because it spreads the spectrum, so it blips around and it can't be traced very well. He was very familiar with the Tor, the onion router network, which is famous for being part of like where people do things and access the dark web. But it's also not just for the dark web and illicit activities, but where you would want the most privacy. And I suspect that has a lot to do with what he was in surveillance himself. He knew everything that was going on with that, and how everything is so porous. So we're tracked everywhere all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
right.
You've discovered some connections with No Man's Land in his notes, and I'll let you explain that, because No Man's Land is a video game that deals with outer space and planetary travel and alien humanoids into uncharted territories. What was your discovery as far as what you found?
Yeah, so it's actually No Man's Sky. I was looking at
No Man's.
Yeah. Well, there was a technical diagram he'd made of a shrunken fractal helix, and this was on his desk, and it just piles of, think of a mad scientist. This was where he lived, and at the bottom of it was this random note. It said No Man's Sky. So I just thought, well, what is that? I looked it up, and it's from the gaming world. It's a virtual reality game which you go to space and explore universes, make bases, discover aliens, and drive craft and all of that, pilot craft. I think that was really fascinating. I've been looking at some of the screenshots of the actual, No Man's Sky, and they are really fascinating. It's like more, of that world. And so when I look at stuff like that, it's like, well, was it just because he really dug sci-fi, or had he been in space? I mean,
right.
Well, if he's dealing in top secret programs and he has that note on his paper, to me, like, the inspiration for video games like that comes from real things. And I'm sure he was involved in that. There's no question, actually, if considering what you've been through.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I think. It's just like, I don't have a document in my hand that says, when he was taking and what he was doing. I know that once you have a clearance of that nature, the top secret with the SEI designation, secret compartment and information, they own you and they own your family. And I know he was manipulated. He wasn't a free man. I'm sure of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so there's lots of that kind of dribs and drabs, trying to piece things together. And I think I've mentioned this before. Like, I didn't know until on his deathbed that he was even working in these programs. I didn't know he had, he was part of the classified world. I had no idea.
Right.
Well, that shows you how secretive it is. I mean, these
completely.
People, they operate in complete secrecy. I know somebody who works for Boeing, and he works for an advanced warfare faction, which they basically predict scenarios 20 years in advance, war scenarios 20 years in advance, and figure out what type of technology the bad guys will have then. And they try to come up with a technology that could compete with that 20 years in the future. And when I ask him questions, he can't answer anything. And I've known this guy for years, almost my whole life. And I just found out through mini conversation, that's what he does. They don't talk about this stuff.
No way. And part of me has like gone, well, I think they vet these kind of people who they know are really buttoned up, and then they build it out. Like they take us into the programs and they build out whatever your attribute is. They look for people who are completely like,
right.
They're gonna die with 1,000 secrets.
Yes.
It's never gonna leave,
And that's exactly who he is. Yeah.
Reminds me of when Stephen Greer always talks about the people that find out about the secret stuff and then are outraged by it and want and demand. He's like, well, why do you think they didn't tell you about it? He's like, what would you have done if he's like, oh, I would have done this and that. And he's like, that's why they didn't involve you. They profile you from the get-go and see if you're going to fit, you're going to be willing to do what they want you to do and be who they want you to be.
100%. And he mentioned like having to take multiple polygraphs over the course of his career, with that old thing. And he was so understated. Like there'd be some like great shocking thing happen and he'd just say, sky is falling.
Yeah.
Like the house is on fire. It's just like there's no response.
No big deal.
So, yeah, fascinating. So I think it's just part of somehow, and I can't articulate this very well linearly or cognitively, but I understand it intuitively, that as I go deeper into his story, somehow it helps me understand my story more and more fully. And it unlocks some kind of karma too, brings something to completion and fruition. And almost like, and I've said this to my father, like he died a couple of years ago, but I kind of chat with him in the other realm, and maybe more of that will open as far as him giving me more direct information about what we're talking about here. But I've said that I'm, hey Dad, I'm not trying to, because I speak about him all the time very publicly in the aftermath of his passing. It's like, I don't mean you're wrong. I just know your story is connected to mine and my brother's, and the truth has to be told. And I think he really understands that. And he wasn't ever able to do what I'm doing. So I'm like the opposite, like totally transparent. There's not a lot I'm not willing to go into. And I think it resolves something for both of us. Well, and my brother as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're completing his work in a way, because the people like those secrets, that's a weight on their shoulders all the time. They're carrying a weight around all the time. And a lot of times, these people are groomed from day one. Mm-hmm. They're blackmailed into positions. Yes. They end up in a place, they don't know how they got there, but they're in too deep. They know they can't open their mouth. It's like, okay, well, I'm a slave to these people now. So I either keep participating or I die. Like that's kind of how they feel. Or
their family could be harmed as well. And they're afraid of that. Mm-hmm. Probably even more than themselves getting killed, So it's like they have them locked down. Yeah. It's like, that's how these things work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, until, it's all coming out now, luckily, because it's,
it is.
We're there, that's exposure and awakening is all happening.
I did want to get your thoughts. So that new bill, that $858 billion defense bill that Biden signed, that's supposed to include whistleblower protection. Like, that's interesting to me. Now, I don't know. I don't think they're talking about like SSP whistleblowers. I think they're talking about, people more on the lines of maybe Bob Lazar. Or Elizondo.
Yeah. The like lower whistleblower.
Yeah. I have to admit, I'm always like, my first thing is always like, I'm really kind of skeptical, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'll believe it when I see it, but let's leave the door open for.
Yeah.
Very skeptical.
Yeah. Well, let's see though. I think this is all part of the change that's in progress, right? I mean, this is happening. So, I am hopeful underneath my skepticism.
Right.
Well, regardless of who's quote in power right now.
Yeah.
Like we know it's not red or blue. Like this is all one entity, right? So
it's deep state cabal versus the rest of humanity. It's essentially
right. But either what I'm trying to say is
they're on both.
It doesn't matter who signed that bill, because it's ultimately, we know it's the drip soft disclosure, but it's ultimately a step forward. Like we got to go somewhere. We have to,
Right. It's like either their hands being forced is why they're doing this, or they're trying to steer they're trying to give a little bit to steer us towards their agenda, possibly, but just not going to work, in my opinion, even though they're trying.
No matter what happens to it, like the fact that this is a thing, this is a headline, this is being proffered now,
right,
is really big. That's quite large.
Right.
Like, hey, heads up, everybody, the general public going, oh, really? So are you, it's interesting. I think the wording, instead of unidentified aerial phenomena, it was like, what was it? Anomalous phenomena, unidentified anomalous
UAP.
phenomena.
The
language. Yeah, the language was a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're constantly rebranding this. I mean, it's like they're trying to figure out a way how to do this without, telling on themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is hilarious because there's no way. Right. Yeah. But it's funny. Well, just real quick. So it's funny to me that, they're giving us a little bit, but trying to control the narrative still and steer us and do this limited hangout. But it's like, I'm like, there's no way that people are just going to be like, oh, these things you've been lying about for decades, and now all of a sudden you're giving us truth, and you expect us to just believe what you're saying and not look any further. It's kind of like once the cat's out of the bag, once people wake up, like, oh, now even the governments and all the official everything is admitting UFOs are real and ETs are real and these technologies are real to a certain extent. It's like, well, now the possibility for everything in the mainstream society is, to them, it's like, well, now anything's possible. So why would we stop at what you're telling us? It's kind of like you're waking people up to a certain degree that, like, it's like they can't put that cat back in the bag, and they I think their hands being forced. That's why I really do. I don't think they want any of this stuff to be out there unless they absolutely had no choice to tell the public.
That's a good point.
Absolutely. Like, they know they have to do it for whatever reason, and they're still trying to, like, steer it, towards their agenda.
Like kicking and screaming to the bitter end, like at the 11th hour. We're not doing this. We're not.
They've been drug kicking and screaming to this point. Yeah, but they're still trying to, But it's funny because it's just going to backfire. Everything they do is just backfiring on them and waking more people up, and speeding up the awakening.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into something I heard you mention on a recent video of yours. You said, "What does it mean to travel on the river with the Bluebird?" And the whole that triggered something with me, and I went down this rabbit hole. But I want you to tell the story first and what it means to you, and then I'll share some of my findings.
Okay. Yeah, it was a good riff. Like, you really played off of that. I can't wait for you to do the reveal on this. So just in my last video, let me see how I can make this brief. I work with child parts, to get information. We could look at them as aspects of my subconscious that have memory and information that I can't access consciously. And I work a lot with my 9-year-old, the one who was taken into the programs or taken into Mars and then points beyond, right? And we were chatting, and it's a really unique way this dialogue unfolds, I have to say. It happens in client sessions as well. I work with people and we do this together. Anyway, she was saying something about the river. I want to tell you about the river. And I said, what is the river? The river outside, I live on a river here. No, the river underground. And long story short, she was talking about the tunnel system. And she was also talking about the river being as a metaphor, a child's metaphor for a state of consciousness that is altered through hypnosis, through drugs, through trauma, through any kind of manipulation. And she said something about, it came out as we went to the river on the Bluebird. So this all was hastened by the fact that a couple years ago, I could recall getting on a white half school bus, a Bluebird school bus, Bluebird bus company, with blue trim, white with blue trim. And I'm sent somewhere, and this was with a gifted program back in elementary school. And I'm getting on this bus, but my memory doesn't go anywhere really beyond that. I feel like this yucky, awful feeling. And so that's what I had initially been asking her about, to tell me about that memory. Can you tell us more? And that's when she said, we went to the river on the Bluebird. So through the tunnels into an altered state of consciousness. And the Bluebird bus thing is taking us back into, to me, it made me think of Project Bluebird, which was a seminal mind control program that was later to become MK Ultra back in, this was 1949, 1950. And if we look at the Bluebird buses, which have been made for decades carrying kids around, they're still made, Bluebird still makes buses. So that's where you went down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm going to share my screen actually, because my findings were,
Yes.
this is a perfect example of like follow the money, right?
Yes.
And just kind of gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here and how these things are actually pulled off. Because it's so easy for us to talk about this stuff, but people can't grasp the fact that it's actually happening. Where is this? You know, there's the big issue, which Tony Rodriguez experienced when he spoke at that conference in California. They couldn't understand where the funding comes from for these programs. And that's when he had to explain to them, like, first of all, they're using slave labor. And second of all, like you have to follow the money. Everything isn't what it seems. Don't take everything at face value. So let me share my screen here.
Right. They're not going to make it apparent that they're funneling a bunch of money into these private, like you're going to have to do a little digging to, you know, it's like, you're not going to just be like, oh, there's the money right there.
Okay. So let me see here. Bluebird transportation. So can you see that, Rebecca?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Hopefully there's nothing else on my screen. I don't want people to see here. Oh, well. So Bluebird transportation. So I just started digging, right? So it's founded in 1932. It was family owned. The original owner dies at a young age of a heart attack. Okay, that's, you know, suspicious or not. It was taken over in the 90s by three major corporations. Merrill Lynch Capital Partners, $18.8 billion yearly revenue. Like, that's a lot of money, 18.8 billion. I don't think people understand the magnitude of that number. Henley's PLC is based in London. I'll get back to that. Cerberus Capital Management. So it's a capital management company named Cerberus. Well, what is Cerberus? Cerberus is the three-headed dog that guards the gates of hell. So you already have this nefarious energy that's taken over the Bluebird transportation system. And in 2016, Cerberus had a $932 million revenue that year, and they only have over 2,000 employees. So 2,000 employees, if you split $932 million, you're talking about some rich people, or that money's being funneled somewhere else. So I started doing some more digging. I found out that Bluebird actually originated as a military supplier. They built bus and ambulance bodies for the armed forces. So it's interesting that the transportation system for our children actually started as a military supplier. And Hensley, one of the companies that now has a share in the Bluebird transportation, one of the shareholders, they're a London motor distributor, and they were founded in 1917. And they're primarily focused on military efforts, assembly of over 25,000 Army vehicles, provided 250,000 tank and aircraft assemblies and parts, handled over 80,000 tank repairs, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a clear military connection with the Bluebird transportation. That's supposed to be just a bus system that, you know, brings our kids to and from school. Yeah. And then Bluebird headquarters is in Jamaica, New York. So I wanted to see like the immediate surrounding businesses, because I know how these things operate. You know, it's not just one entity. So I started looking at the immediate surrounding businesses in that area. Core Communication, it's a network infrastructure system. And I'll share a photo of that just because this is their main website photo. Now, this doesn't prove or disprove anything. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So it's just showing it a worldwide infrastructure, Core Communications LLC. Interesting logo here.
Could be an eye though in that logo.
Could be an eye. Exactly, like an all-seeing eye.
Or black sun.
Black sun. You know, these are the type of things you have to look for when you're, you know, doing research. And this doesn't prove or disprove anything. It's just curious, right? Let me pull that back up. Not that. This. Okay, so then Starlight Shopping Inc. is another one. Starlight Shopping Inc. is located right next to the Bluebird headquarters, but there is no information available anywhere online about them. I couldn't find a website. I couldn't find anything, but I could find that business was located in Jamaica, New York, in that same zip code. So it led me to Starlight Children's Foundation that's been operating since the 80s, who has helped 21 million kids since 1982. Interesting name, Starlight. They've helped 21 million kids since 1982, working with over 800 children's hospitals. Primary focus is providing an escape for kids via new Starlight virtual reality system.
My God.
So, this is connected or not. I don't know. It's still interesting. And we know about these foundations and these charities and where's that money actually going, right? So then we have Greenwood Security Services is another one located right next to Bluebird headquarters in Jamaica. And this one I found particularly interesting. Let's see. So they're an offshore company. Our clients include corporations and services, oil and gas, chemical manufacturing, electrical power, energy, software development, computing technology, pharmaceuticals, and property management, ranging in size from Fortune 100 to startups. Areas of practice include homeland security, compliance, training facilities, security, asset protection, workplace violence prevention and response, business information, and trade secret protection, corporate security, organization development, and executive coaching. Greenwood Security Services is a private corporation and is no way affiliated with the United States government. It's interesting that they say that. So going back to my findings, these are just all either coincidences, I don't know. But like I said, it doesn't prove or disprove anything. It's just interesting to note.
Right.
Now,
Magic School Bus.
Now, let's talk about the Magic School Bus cartoon in the 1990s. Do you remember that show, Rebecca?
I do, yeah.
The Magic School Bus, the yellow school bus that literally takes kids to outer space. Interesting enough in itself. I decided to watch the first episode, which, by the way, is called The Magic School Bus Gets Lost in Space. And immediately, in what they introduce in the first episode is a pet lizard. The classroom pet is a lizard, and they're told to follow the lizard when they get to space, which I think is interesting. Like, when you get to space, just follow the lizard. Okay. Now, I guess, I don't know what they're trying to do. Whenever a kid sees a lizard in space now, they're supposed to think it's friendly. I don't know. They start telling us about aliens on other planets. This is a kids program in the 90s telling you about aliens on other planets. The whole premise of the first episode, Miss Frizzle takes the children on a field trip to the planetarium, which is closed. Instead of going to the planetarium, they actually go to space. They actually go to outer space. So at the end of the episode, the Magic School Bus headquarters gets a phone call from a concerned person, and they start asking questions. They're like, if that bus is actually in space, why aren't the children floating? And the guy's answer is, would you believe me if I told you that we use anti-gravity plates in the bus? Like, why would they share that on a children's show, right? And he starts explaining them the anti-gravity plates. And then this person says, there's no way a spacecraft can make it to all 9 planets in one day. And then his reply was, well, if we did it in real time, you would be a grown-up by the time we got to Pluto. In real time. So what are they implying there? Now, it's just like they're kind of like, I don't know, priming these children for these programs, planting that seed. And then the whole yellow school bus thing, I think that's an MK Ultra trigger. And we had Kamala Harris come out and gushing over the yellow school bus. Who doesn't love a yellow school bus? Can you raise your hand if you love it?
Over and over.
She just kept repeating the yellow school bus. And I feel like that's an MK Ultra trigger also. So, I mean, there's a lot of connections here. I just flew through that.
Totally.
I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I love that you dug around like that. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I knew there was a lot in there when the whole to the river on the Bluebird is really interesting, metaphorically, and then to have all this connection. So I'm glad you watched my video so you could bring that forward. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Magic School Bus stuff is wild. 100%.
Right.
Do you also have a picture of? Can you show people the picture you had of that Bluebird logo is still on the buses? Like this isn't a thing of the past. The Bluebird is still on school buses.
Right. I don't have one on hand.
Yeah, it's okay, but look for it. Look for it out there.
Search it.
As you're in the world.
Yeah, you can search for it. Yeah, but that, it's interesting. It's a Bluebird logo, but the bird is black too, which I find interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
It's black. It's blue on the logo, but it's black on the buses. So, I mean, maybe not every bus. I don't actually know, but
no, it's really it's
share
black.
screen.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yes.
The Bluebird? Okay. Yeah, there it is. So it's there's an interesting tie there, and in Project Bluebird, the CIA program it is MK Ultra program, like you said. So there's a lot of dots to connect. Nothing's black and white. And, there's also a multi-dimensional aspect to everything too. Like there's alternate dimensions involved, and you have to get rid of your preconceived notions of like the 3D reality of what's possible.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true. Whew.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh.
You all right over there?
Doing good over here. I was thinking how true that is, and how many I kind of flash back to the time when my 9-year-old self was the first one who said we had gone to space. And this was just like back in 2018 or something. Like, I didn't know about this. And I said, what were we doing in space, sweetie? She goes, fighting aliens. And I kind of had to go, what the fuck?
Yeah.
We're fighting aliens in space? Like, there's always a lot of things I've had to kind of catch up with. In my own kind of curve, with a steep curve, going down my particular rabbit hole with my very degraded experiences throughout all this, and how it links up to my family and so many other things. Mm-hmm. So that's like a really good statement. It's a powerful statement. I mean, everybody who's doing any kind of memory retrieval or is questioning their conventional narrative about their life can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
You mentioned one of your sessions, and I know you've gotten back into doing sessions again. And I don't know if you're allowed to share anything or not, but like, are you starting to paint a picture with the information that's coming through from your sessions? I know one of your posts talked about a possible Russian space program that you.
There's so many things. I don't really divulge much of that. I never give anybody's name ever, right. Of course. But there's first of all, I would say the people who come to see me, I'm a little probably don't have an objective view, because the people who come to see me come because they see these shows and they know that I'm going to get what they're talking about. Like if they say they were abducted in their sleep and they went to space, I'm not going to be like, do you think you need to see a psychiatrist about this? Is this kind of some delusion you're having? Right. I'm going to give them a space to talk about that. So, but I see, and one of my questions has been, like, how have the programs since I was taken back in the 70s, early 80s, 82, how have things changed over time? Like, what's going on now? And I would say from my client sessions, I observed that they have found more ways to abduct people that are, how would I say, like, in a way, less invasive, but more insidious, like more through the realm of sleep, more through the realm of the astral, and using like psychotronic technology, other high tech AI. I've been with people who, from the looks of what I received in the Akashic records, they're like training an army, for example, an Armageddon army, to take us into a dark timeline, and getting these like super soldier warrior types ready to fight for that timeline. I don't think that's where we're going, but it's so disruptive to a person's reality. Mm-hmm. So I think it seems to me that maybe there is not as much physical abduction happening. I could be wrong about that, but it seems to be the ways and means have become subtler and more sophisticated, advanced in a way. I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
This is funny because for one, I'm writing a book. Nobody knows that yet. So this is the first time anybody's heard that. But I've been writing a book, and I literally just wrote about exactly that. I I was talking about how I personally think the physical abductions have lessened, but that's only because of the advancements in technology that allow them to abduct your consciousness, and not only astrally, like they can do things astrally via psionics, and
put your consciousness in a clone body and different, different body.
And it's funny, I agree with you 100%. It's incredible what they're capable of, and that's what makes this stuff so unbelievable.
Well, and hard for people in the general populace to really get what we're like. You know, it's big enough to say, like, I was taken into space, but then when you talk about introducing all this like mind-blowing technology, you lose people, right?
Yeah.
Like,
that's fantasy. That's you just watch too much sci-fi, blah 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 blah.
Right.
Little do they know, almost all sci-fi comes from real stuff. That's how it started in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's actually reversed. They think it's all just coming from people getting stuff from sci-fi mostly, but it's actually sci-fi comes from the real stuff, but it's a perfect cover. It's a perfect cover, and that's what a lot of whistleblowers say. They're like, that's one of the reasons they put a lot of this stuff in sci-fi. Is kind of like a plausible deniability. Like, oh, these people, these insiders or whistleblowers are just repeating stuff from Star Wars, Star Trek, blah 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 blah.
Right.
When in fact it's exact opposite.
I have been also feeling like, I've been understanding more and more through my own perspective and journeying through my own material and experiences how we are fields of consciousness in bodies. And, you think about that, it's so imperative for us to be, so to speak, the masters of our own field, our own awareness, our consciousness. That's what changes our paradigm, but it also allows us to stay protected. So we're not as pliable to those powers and their designs, their objectives.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's exactly honestly the biggest thing right now that anyone could be talking about is protecting yourself, and like methods of protecting yourself from these types of attacks and from these things, and the power of your mind and what you're actually capable of. You don't need to go buy 1,000 crystals and grid your house. That would help, but we can do all this stuff on our own. We're capable of it. It's just believing in yourself and taking that power back. Taking it away from them and bringing it back.
We are the technology. We are the technology. We are the technology.
Yes, exactly.
We are the technology. We can't say that enough. My God. Yeah.
Which is why they push so hard to mind control us and manipulate us psychologically, so we never ever ever discover that we are the ones with all the power in creating our reality. And never discover. We've been given this ridiculous Truman Show Matrix version of reality that we're supposed to believe in, and when they push that so hard to keep us in that box. And when you finally start thinking for yourself and looking outside of that box, which takes courage in and of itself, and can be traumatic for people in and of itself, and very scary. But if you have the courage to do that, then you see all the strings, you see all the fake sets. It's like you see behind the curtain. You see the men doing things behind the curtain and manipulating things, and then you're like, oh, this is all just a fake reality that we're just told, we're handed. Here you go, here's reality, don't question it.
Right.
And then you realize, wait, we're the ones creating. They're just telling us, they're just putting out what they want us to create, and then we create it.
That's
the game. That's
well said.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So the awakening is us waking up to that, to like realizing, oh, we've been manipulated, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yes.
And then
I appreciate this part of the conversation.
Yeah, and then we can create the reality we actually want to create, and that the planet would be an amazing place, I feel like, if there wasn't all this manipulation going on, for so long, and suppression of our consciousness.
So you mentioned, well, I agree, by the way, but you were talking about, you had some, I guess, possible new information what you call Mars mantid complications and politics, and I'm curious to know
Oh,
what
yeah,
you,
yeah,
what
yeah.
you mean by that.
Yeah, right. So I'm continuing to get my own, memories back. I think you guys know that. I through different means, more information is always coming up. So I think in our last, like when I first interviewed with you guys 2 years ago, like which seems like 10 years ago, I had been talking about the mantids on Mars, and I remember you and I talking about this, Tyler, like I couldn't understand why were we trying, like why were we fighting the mantids, and then we had mantids who were working for us, and I could, like, politically it's really fucking complicated with the indigenous races on Mars. It has been over time. That is not a simple equation whatsoever. And so recently I've been working on some drawings that illustrate my experiences in space and so on. And I was drawing a large drawing of a mantid elder, the elders as I call them. And when I was in the program there, boy, we had a lot of goings on with this group. And I started to connect with the unified field of consciousness of this group as I was doing the drawing. I had not anticipated this. So I was getting like psychic feedback. This went on for some time because it was taking me a while to do the drawing. And I had a memory field open up that was, if you've watched my videos, it's been really hard for me to remember what I did on offense. What was I instigating as a super soldier? What kind of battle stuff was I actually doing? Like as in the aggressor, the attacker, the killer. That's really hard stuff to remember. And so I was taken into a really intense field of experience. It wasn't just information coming in. I was going into the experience of the mantids when we attacked them. And it was intense. I could hear all this screaming like frequency. Our team with the what I call as Mars Defense Force, we bombed them, sent a gas into their underground labyrinth, as I call it, and then bombarded them with frequency. And I heard them say to me in this whole thing that was opening up with the drawing, remember our strengths and you will also know our weaknesses. Because they're masters of frequency, we could also co-opt them using frequency. So in that moment of introduced trauma, we mind controlled them. We interjected a lot of nefarious programming through frequency to get them to come work for us.
Wow.
I mean, it was kind of shocking because it was so elegantly designed. I mean, the whole somewhat a similar analogy to trauma-based mind control with earthlings, earth human people, children, whatever, taking that to the off-world arena to use on other races. How can we co-opt them? What's the best strategy here? So a lot of the mantids who are working for us were under a kind of spell, let's say. A spell, a program, it's like co-opting a key code so we could get all of them. We never did. They were too strong and wise and powerful for that, but we certainly did go after them in different ways, and they are great survivors. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it all goes back to frequency again. And it doesn't surprise me that that's being done other places besides Earth, by the way.
Yeah.
It would, that's just, a normal day, operating as usual for these people. But it's frequency. And I've heard people explain that like raising your frequency is important because, for the ascension purposes. Yeah. But also direct energy weapons, psychotronic weapons don't work on you. Like they work better. They're far more effective on a lower vibe person. And that's why they want you on prescription medicine. That keeps your vibe substantially lower.
And mind control works way better.
And everything works way better when you're
if you're traumatized and dissociated, you are operable, period.
Right.
Yeah. 100%. And that's another thing we need to remember too, is like all these people coming forward in these truthers and the influencers in the community, a lot of them are whistleblowers. A lot of them, if not all of them, participated in these programs. Maybe not everybody remembers. I think a lot more people were involved that actually have their memories. But either way, we're looking at victims of MK Ultra, right? So, I mean, if that happened to you as a child, you're probably still easily manipulated, unfortunately, in some aspects, because they know your weaknesses. They know exactly how to target you. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing happening right now when we're looking at like the new heights of division in this community, right? It's becoming absolutely insane. But we have to remember, like, some of these people are literally like MK Ultra assets, and people are being activated. And if they were able to manipulate you as a child, they know your weaknesses. They know how to control you still. And unfortunately, people are still in that position. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. No, I think it's true. And that's why, I mean, I've had to work really hard to get my own like consciousness back. I meditate every morning, I meditate every night, like eating and drinking and sleeping. That's part of my protocol. And being heart-centered, being super self-aware is my like top-notch priority, so that I cannot be, fucked with again. That's over. So it comes back to consciousness. How much am I working with my consciousness and also my heart? The energy field of the heart is such a huge protector. When that chakra is activated, you have direct line of connection back into the cosmos and the source point.
Yep.
That's a technology. And we, I think, don't spend enough time talking about that in intelligent ways. The heart's not just gooey, like lovey-dovey emojis. There's a lot more going on there. And it's a gateway, it's a portal. It's a higher consciousness. And in the Tibetan cosmology, we would say the mind and the heart are the same thing.
Right.
So, really interesting.
Exactly.
Nailed it. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's why, like, that phrase, like, I know it by heart. Think about that. Like, why do we say know it by heart instead of I know it by brain? Because, like, what does that tell you? Innately, instinctively, we understand the importance of our heart, and the heart is actually a brain. It's actually a brain. So when you memorize things, you memorize them by heart. You know it by heart. And you talked about being self-aware, and that's true, because if you're not self-aware, then what are you? Like you're just mindlessly participating in this matrix,
And science is backing up everything we just said. What is it? I think it's the electric field of the heart is 100 times stronger than the brain, and the magnetic field is 5,000 times stronger than that of the brain. So
and it amplifies psychic ability. When I know that has had a direct influence on my own psychic ability opening and staying strong, is that heart connection. Let me say it with my heart, like you said, Tyler. I know it from here, it's not up here. Yeah.
The true knowing is here, right?
Yeah.
The mind is supposed to be a servant of the heart. Well, society has it reversed, where everyone's stuck in their mind and not in their heart. So we got to get back.
Yeah, and I would say too, I would put in a plug for embodiment, and for me, like getting back in my body and not just in some trauma field somewhere, like dissociation, being in like having awareness of the sensations of my body. Like I went for a lot of my life not knowing, like, am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I cold? Do I need to pee? Like, what does my body even need? Or what are the like the body is such a fine-tuned instrument. But it's always sending subtle signals. Like a lot of intuitive people out in your audience know sometimes you get a sensation, a tingling, a pulsation, something that goes through your left arm or your right toe or whatever. Those are signals. They're coming from everywhere. Learn to read them. So being for me, keep it in first person here. It's been really important to be somatically aware. That also helps clear your chakras and ground you to this earth, which is another huge support if you're looking to regain your own mastery, to be master of yourself, your experience, and so that you cannot be put under a spell or operable.
Yes. And fall into those consciousness traps, which is exactly what they are. I also, you also mentioned some new information about your twin, I believe.
Well,
and information
about I don't know if I have new information about Dean. I think what I might have said is I have been I'm aware that I need to go deeper into the goodness of my experience that has to do with my presence on a ship now that's always been part of this lifetime. I just have turned away from it. And Tyrion on that ship is a mate from Procyon. And I had memories come back in which I recalled that I had been programmed very traumatically, tortured, I would say, to never relate to those that I call the Light Alliance, which is a galactic confederation. That's how they introduce themselves to me. Don't ever relate with your mission. Don't relate with the people there. Don't remember that you know anything about that. And certainly never talk about it. So I wasn't parsing out my own feelings every time I would kind of mention this. Because if you've heard me mention it, it's always really fast and I'm in and out the door with it. I don't go into detail about it. And I recognize it's more than just feeling self-conscious because it's something that's going on now and it's so full of light and da-da-da. But I had intense feelings of shame and humiliation coming up around it. I'm like, what's that about? This is so beautiful. Why is that all coming up? And it's a programming, especially because you guys know this, they use sexual abuse above anything else to program and torture us. Mm-hmm. Like, isn't that interesting? So in any case, I'm more able to embrace that reality. And I called them my galactic guardians as well, because when I was a kid, how did I survive all this? They were helping me. They kept part of what I would say is part of my soul, part of my own most natural essence with them on the ship while I was being taken into the dark ops. And it was through the auspices of my experience up there that I even volunteered for this Earth experience to go into all these programs. So I'm doing my due diligence and coming back around and spending a lot of time kind of parsing out all the information here. There's a lot more to come, a lot that I know that I've kept back and so on and so forth, but it's something that I'm more ready to navigate now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned the Light Alliance. Can you elaborate on that a little further?
Yeah, it's my own shorthand. It's just my own name for them as family. It kind of takes it out of this realm of like this official group with a big name into something I can work with that feels cozy and safe. Okay. Yeah.
But they're a positive group.
100%. So we are completely offhand. We're not hands-on with humanity, but more observing things that happen. And part of a larger consortium. And that ship it's very light. It's a Syrian craft that is, I would say, as a living light ship, polymorphic. It can change shape, and it's not a warship by any means at all. And we're making sure that we stay on track with the mission of basically observation, and being very neutral with things that have happened. We were especially interested. We were, how do I say it in first person, interested in the galactic slave trade, which is a lot of what I was experiencing or rubbing elbows with when I was in the programs, and relaying that information back to them. So, and it's changed over time, but our non-intervention policy has been pretty, it's not entirely not intervening, but we're never going to a planet and like giving them arms or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think of them more as family and not with this like big, huge agenda. And my function on the ship is I'm resting in a pod a lot of times as an Andromedan. It's making sure we stay on track with those objectives and never letting our emotions or our like we're going to go in and save the day somewhere kind of come into play. We have like what could be called as prime directives that we have to follow, if that makes sense. Yeah. So maybe non-intervention isn't the right word, because obviously we have an investment in bringing things to light throughout this area of the galaxy. But there's limits to what we feel we should do, so to speak.
By the way, I've seen a few orbs. I don't know if you've seen them too. I have fly past you during this episode. So whatever that means, they're with you.
Whatever that means.
The Light Alliance is with you, right?
Oh yes.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, and it's interesting. And I think it's good to get information from these groups and to know that they're out there, that there are groups out there that actually have humanity's best interest in mind. They're not trying to kill us, and obviously you said you were like bumping heads with the galactic slave trade. So this would mean that it's separate from that. Right. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. So one of the things we were interested in, so it's always hard to find human language for this. Like when I'm sitting here in an Earth body, let's talk about consciousness and bodies. I'm a field of consciousness. So I'm incarnated as Rebecca, but I have an aspect that's on that ship. One of our things when we'll take it back in a linear way into time, is like we were interested in what was going on with the slave trade back in what we would call now as the 70s and 80s.
Right.
And so I come down to earth and get abducted in the program so we can learn more through direct experience.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've said that on previous interviews also. I'm a firm believer that some of the people who are disclosing this now or blowing the whistle on this now came to Earth knowing they were going to be abducted into the program so they could ultimately
Yes,
share the story, blow the whistle on it, right?
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah. And that is what I'm 100% that person too. And that's what opened this for me to allow me to really heal. Is like I get the bigger picture. I needed all of this to happen. That can be hard from a conventional point of view to stomach or to process that. Like I came in and I'm glad all that happened. I mean, on a 3D level as a kid, that was awful. But in a bigger picture of the soul's journey over lifetimes and parallel experiences, it makes a lot of sense to me. I wouldn't be here talking to you if I hadn't gone through all that, because I wouldn't know. I mean, I just wouldn't have had the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so we have, the split consciousness part of you is, in a parallel dimension somewhere, life, whatever, carrying out these missions. Then you have your physical body here, but then we also have our higher galactic self, which I believe is what you might tap into when you're doing light language or during your sessions. We're tapping into another higher aspect of ourself that's completely separate from that. Would you agree?
Yes. I mean, I go back in my own experience or my own awareness into like the original source seed that seems to come from the Andromeda galaxy. And from that, we can trace it back to source. Where do we begin? We're always connected to that creative impulse of the universe where we began. Yeah. So we're tapping in. I mean, I feel like I tap into a lot of different aspects of my consciousness, a lot of different, maybe avatars, we could say. Yes, around the light language, tapping into a higher octave of my own experience, not my 3D self per se, but something that is not necessarily separate from me, but again, a higher octave of my own being.
Right. And I've experienced a session with you. I recently had a session with you, and it was incredible. And I love your method of how you incorporate the light language, and then you translate it in real time. And you end up speaking in poetry, which I think is, I don't know if you mean to do that or not.
It just happens. It happens. Yeah, it happens. It happens.
But it's beautiful because it's like, it's kind of cryptic, but it's not. It tells a story, but there's so much to unpack. It's like code in itself. And I really appreciate that. I got a lot out of it. And whoever's listening, if you are looking for help, uncovering anything, Rebecca is your girl. She can help you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I sometimes feel like I overlook what I've been gifted with, like that I can use all this now. It's definitely coming from a higher aspect. It's not like little Rebecca sitting down there with, all my little thingies. I mean, all my neurosis like we humans have. It takes me into another level, and that's what light language does. It keeps me at a high vibration throughout the entire length of the session. And allows me to downstep a lot of higher information. It's interesting how it comes through and I understand a basic information set from it. Not a verbatim translation, but I got the info. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then how has, I know the answer to this, but people might need to hear it. How has doing these sessions actually helped you heal? Because I know there's a trade-off there.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I just feel like I'm so blessed to be doing what I came here to do on so many levels. I do not doubt my purpose here at all. And I know that I'm helping people, and it comes from a place of heart. And I'm just glad that this is unlocked, over the years, that I'm able to function at this level. Yeah. And it gives me, what does it? It gives me a perspective about my own journey. I think it does, again, it elevates my frequency every time in a session. Like when I do a few sessions in a row, I kind of have to, pull myself back down here in a way. Not like I'm ungrounded and floating away, but like my energy is really high. There's
Yeah.
something really transformative for me about it, and also really humbling that people trust me with their deepest, most intimate information with reason. I mean, I do respect that. I'm very honored to do what I do as well, and that there's so much validation that we are so much more than we think. Like, this isn't something real special that I'm doing. Like, we all have access to our own unique abilities that can come on board. Like, if I can pull this through out of everything I've been through, that's a testimony to something beautiful in the human spirit.
Right.
Right.
Well said.
Exactly.
Amen to that. And can you let people know how they can find you and book a session if they want to?
Yeah, RebeccaRoseBarfoot.com is my website. I am probably 2 months back. I'm booked out about 2 months in advance right now. So, yeah.
That's great.
That's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you.
Still waiting on you to write that book too.
Well, and I was saying I've got to go on sabbatical to get my drawings and paintings done, and then to start the first book, which is in pieces and parts, but it's really difficult to do with everything else happening. So
Sure.
Right.
time-wise.
Right. But the idea, it's there. It's happening. I know it is.
100%, because the writing is so natural too. Like, my writing comes from that higher place that I don't entirely understand.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're always tapping into that. Yeah,
It's like channeling, right?
Right.
in a way.
In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is a form of it. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Mhm.
And sometimes you're writing and you
Yeah.
don't know what you're gonna write, and the next thing you know, you've written a whole
You get in
page.
that flow state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Flows
Yeah.
on. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, joining us once
Yeah.
again, sharing all your beautiful information. We
Yeah.
really appreciate it. And yeah, guys, RebeccaBarfoot.com. That's your website.
No, that'll take you to my old art website, RebeccaRoseBarfoot.com.
Rose.
Rebecca Rose Barfoot. Sorry.
Yeah.
I get confused with all that stuff. Too much to remember.
We'll have the
I
link.
get it.
Yeah.
I
We'll have
get
the
it.
link in the
Yeah.
description.
The link's below,
Yeah.
guys. Go book a session with her.
Yeah, and also I'm trying to grow my Telegram channel so I can get off Facebook, which is shadow banning me, and it's also just a really compromised platform. So if
Oh
you
yeah,
want to
definitely.
follow me over on Telegram, you can. All right.
Yeah. I'll put that link below. Also, I do follow you on Telegram. I like it for certain things, but it's very corrupt in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
What isn't nowadays, actually. Well, thank you for joining us. This was a lot of fun. So
Thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah.
thank you guys
Bye-bye.
for tuning in. Until next time, have a great evening. We love you all.